it's good to take a breath before starting, center yourself for a moment, make yourself aware where you are, what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then, because they have all hectic days, we go from A to B every day. So it's sometimes good to take the moment and stare into the screen.
Yeah. Okay, so we are actually going live. So I will just turn on to our meeting. Okay. Hi guys. Nice to see you all on the really cool lecture that you will listen to today. And today our next speaker, let's say like that, is Jessica Guy. And Jessica, oops, sorry. And Jessica is an interdisciplinary designer, a researcher and coordinator of the distributed design platform. And actually this talk will enrich the collaborative making practices, and will give a brief introduction to what the distributed design is. And Jessica will just tell you what to do, how to do, and how to use real practices to feel good in what you're doing, and to feel the design as it is. So yeah, I think that I can give the voice to Jessica.
Thank you so much. Thank you for a very nice introduction. Before I share my screen, I guess I just elaborate really briefly on a tiny bit on my background. I guess that's always helping, because how do you become an interdisciplinary designer, or how do you become to that stage where you call yourself any kind of title? I guess all of us are quite hybrid profiles, have different type of interests and different kinds of backgrounds. But the beauty in that is that I actually started with something, been interested in one thing, and then followed the path of becoming an industrial designer as a profession. But actually from that path, I've encountered many different inputs and people and organizations. And through that, I've been able to tap into different fields of interest, which one of them is distributed design and what I'm going to talk about today. But through this journey, you become, I guess, a bit more of a hybrid and interdisciplinary profile. So now today I'm working at FabLab Barcelona, leading this project distributed design platform. But yeah, there are many inputs that are coming to this concept, and some of which I will also talk about today. So I'm going to share my screen and hopefully can share some insights on what I'm doing and what I think could be interesting for you. I will try to speak slow and try to elaborate and articulate myself well, but if there's any questions along the line, or if there's something that I haven't explained well enough in terms of concepts, or I didn't articulate myself well enough, please feel free to write in the chat or speak out afterwards in our conversation in the Q&A, and I'm happy to talk in detail about more things. And also for the people joining online on YouTube, I hope you have a chance to add some reflections in the comment sections afterwards. So here we are, talking about driving design. I'm going to talk about how the distributed design platform, or how the people from the distributed design platform, the collective, the community, is looking into how to enrich the design practice through different types of values, for different types of practices on a day-to-day basis in the design field. And to start with a bit of background, I always like to start with one of my favorite books. I would say one of my top 10 books from Richard Sennett. It's called Together: The Rituals, Pleasures, and Politics of Corporations. It's a very interesting book, and I can really highly recommend reading it. And while I don't necessarily agree with all of the wording that Richard Sennett is choosing within his book, for example, craftsman, we could change that to craftspeople to make it more inclusive. I definitely agree with some of the ideas that he's explaining in his writings. So Richard Sennett is a professor of sociology in very known universities in the United States. And in his book Rituals, he's talking about the evolution of the workshop. So you may, if you think back on history times, you may remember that we used to work in guilds, so isolated practices that would work in one workshop, and a master would explain to their followers how to do certain things, if that's woodworking, metalworking, glassworking, all of these different fields, but they would work more or less isolated within their field, but become highly specialized within their field. And what he explains in his book, that actually over time, there were certain moments in our history which become very interesting. And that is when the different workshops have opened up themselves and have opened up themselves for collaboration. So for example, in this case, in the example that he's sharing in that book, is that a metal worker or a person from a metal worker guild has started working together with a person that is working on glass or was highly specialized in glass. And through this collaboration of these highly two specialized fields, they were able to invent the telescope. So this is one of the major inventions that we had, and has been able through that to see in the sky and see the planets and everything that is beyond the human eye right in front of us. So that's one important time in our life where we started to really emphasize on collaboration. Another one is a really nice and an interesting piece of our history is, and what is shaping really the field of design of today is the Bauhaus. Maybe some of you are already very much aware of the Bauhaus or what it is. Maybe some of you are not. So I will try to elaborate in a brief moment. The Bauhaus really has revolutionized how we teach art and architecture and design. The Bauhaus is a German art and design school, and it was established and operational mostly in the time between 1990 to 1993. It has become quite famous for its approach to design, and famous people like Wassily Kandinsky or Mies van der Rohe came out of this Bauhaus era. The Bauhaus was founded by an architect called Walter Gropius in Weimar and was grounded in this idea of the Gesamtkunstwerk, which is German and can translate into English comprehensive artwork. And this Gesamtkunstwerk basically plays with that idea that arts and crafts would basically be brought together. So similar as we've heard before with the guilds, all of these different fields would be brought together and attempting to unify the principles of design or the principles of mass production, and basically leading into this idea of the industrial revolution, industrialization. This is something what you can see on the presentation, is that there are all these different types of specifications of these types of areas of interest, like it's wood and metal and color and glass, and everything is brought together. So when the students would join the Bauhaus, all of them would be invited to learn all of the different crafts, to be able to, through this interconnection of these different areas of expertise, to invent new ideas or find interesting areas of new developments. And today, actually, before going further, the Bauhaus actually later became one of the most influential means of modern design and architecture and art. I mean, maybe some of you already know. Many of the members of the Bauhaus have been also further elaborating on exploring design education. For example, Moholy-Nagy is one of the maybe more famous people as well. He has taken the idea of the Bauhaus to the United States, where he has been one of the people developing the idea further in the Boston Institute of Design, which is in Boston, United States. And as I mentioned before, this has really long-lasting influence on how we teach design today. I was mentioning before, I was an industrial design student, and when I look at this picture, I can see how this is still a part of my design curriculum today, and obviously a bit adapted, but yeah, it's still an essence of that. Whereas prior to the times of the Bauhaus, people have been really still been working in isolated casts, for example, and not so much interdisciplinary. Today, in the framework of the New European Bauhaus, it's an initiative of the European Union, they're also trying to reevaluate what the meaning of the Bauhaus is and what role it plays today in design and architecture to foster a more inclusive and sustainable society. And it really, they're really looking into how to culturally enrich the response of design and that goes beyond functionalities, beyond how we see design maybe still today. However, from this maybe very beautiful and romantic point of view of design, we also have to be facing the realities of the impact of design. So design has led us, unfortunately, to the temporary ecological social crisis that we are experiencing as well. Because the extractive nature of our current approach to design has led us to the overviews of Earth resources. This means that we're using up natural resources faster than they can actually be regenerated by the Earth, leading to an environmental damage. And this approach of design is really not sustainable in the long term, as we know. Then oftentimes within the first few months of the year, we're getting details such as we have now used up 1.3 amount of the resources the Earth can serve us within a 3 months of the year. So these are very damaging facts that we're have to take in every day. And our current approach of design is often also very heteronormative and very Western-centric. That means that many objects, products, and services are designed with a very limited perspective, often ignoring the needs and experiences of people from different cultures and different backgrounds that are not necessarily situated within Europe. And especially talking here about indigenous cultures as well. This results in products that are not inclusive, that are not accessible for everyone, and simply have like very dualist like purposes. And sometimes even they perpetuate very harmful stereotypes and biases. They are very interesting, iconic designs that came out of the last century. We know, for example, when the MacBook Air came out at first, so the whole Apple design product line has an incredible influence over how other technological products are being designed until today. You see the influence everywhere. But still, the products themselves are not accessible, not affordable for everyone, and it's extremely harmful for our Earth's resources, how we extract those. So also another really nice example, what came out of earlier times around the 1950s in the more modern design area is, for example, the Eames chair. They have been very stylish and comfortable and brilliant pieces of design that came over the last century, but they may not consider the best material use, for example. Saying that is that the current approach to design is often very human-centric, technocratic, market-orientated, and very much embedded in capitalism. This means that design often is focused on meeting the needs of desires of only wealthy and Western societies, and products are not accessible and affordable, and as I mentioned before, extract resources and not considering the impact of that. So this can be very devastating if you take all of this in, but everything really we have to bring this to our mind every day. Again, is like everything that we're experiencing and interacting within our day-to-day is design. So from the largest structures and objects, everything that you see around in our built environment has been designed at one point. So we can imagine what impact design has in our day-to-day life and what role it plays in, for example, the climate emergency, just to name one of the many emergencies that we're facing. But let's try to take this a bit from a more positive point of view, maybe, because as I mentioned, that can be a bit daunting at times, and we don't want to go into daunting topics. we really want to see the opportunities that design can bring to us as well. Because as design is everywhere, that means that if we tackle design in a more holistic point of view, that means we can tackle maybe also many different areas for a more positive twist. And for this, I would like to connect to one of the statements of Herbert A. Simmons. You may have known or heard of him before. He is a political scientist, and he was one of the first people who actually mentioned design thinking, which is maybe today a bit of an outdated term, in his writings. And he states that design is devising courses of actions aimed to changing existing conditions into preferred ones. This takes a very different approach to design, away from products, services, and objects, to design being an act of social engineering, if you want to say it like this. Designing the interactions we are having, the habits that we're building, how we are, how we think, how we're being, basically. And if we're taking this into our perspective, we can very much understand what he tries to elaborate, or what he tries to mean with that, what he tries to say with that. So, for example, if we take the best example, the phone, the extension of ourselves somehow, when this was designed, when this object was designed, they didn't just design the object itself, but it designed as well how we interact in our environment and how we are on a day-to-day basis, right? We see people how changing the habits, they're changing how they interact in the subway, how they are at work. So we see the impact again of design, but it's nice to abstract it from the object itself, but more in the interrelations of what we do with design. There's a very interesting other notion that I would like to connect to this one, which is from Enzio Manzini, an Italian design academic and author, who has wrote the book Design When Everybody Designs. Also a very nice recommendation in case you're interested. Is that meaning that basically all of us, even if we are not designers by our professional accreditation, by a system, by a school that has put a label on us with that, we're very much designers, all of us, in one way or in another. Because when we get up every morning, or when we decide which course we want to take in our career, this is somehow designing our professional space, or like this somehow designing us. We're deciding on what path we want to go, and this is somehow shaping us in return. So if design is a social engineering practice somehow, and design is everywhere because our built environment surrounds us and the products we experience, which we interact with every day, and also everyone is a designer, then I think things can get a lot more interesting and a bit more accessible as well to tap into. Because then design can become and can be seen as something very collaborative, something plural, participatory, and distributed. And I would like to suggest, based on ideas from these authors before, or for example, Arturo Escobar, another really amazing Colombian-American anthropologist who has written the book Design for the Plurals, is to move away from design, from its functionalist, capitalist orientation, towards a non-dualist, relational and regenerative conception of design. This is a bit to the introduction, which is more like meta, to going a bit more deeper into what I do on a day-to-day basis, and how this all comes back to what I'm speaking, how I'm speaking to you today. So what is distributed design and what role plays it? Distributed design is a platform. It was established in 2017 and co-funded by the European Union. And it brings together a diverse member base from cultural and creative institutions, from fab labs and universities and makerspaces. And over the 5 years, the platform has provided a Euro-wide programming of opportunities to support emerging creatives' work and in an emerging field of distributed design, taking a lot of these notions that I was mentioning before and into account, and trying to translate them day-to-day practices and interactions with creatives so they can make them part of their work. But really, distributed design or the distributed design platform is actually way more than just a platform, as it was more than just a website or something like this. Is tapping into the ideas that I was mentioning before. So the values that we are sharing, the way that we are working on a day-to-day basis. It's moving away from the outdated production paradigm, what you can see here on the left on your screen, which is the PITO model. It's like product in and trash out model. So you're extracting resources on one area of the globe, you're shipping those to another area, you're producing or manufacturing an item, and then this item is being shipped to another area where it's then used, most likely not to the end of its life cycle, and then thrown away, and then unfortunately somewhere it lands on a landfill and it just goes to waste. So it moves away from this idea to a different idea that is called DIDO. It's called data in, data out. So instead of resources or materials that are moving from A to B, it's only data that is moving from A to B. So what you can see here is, for example, that someone can make a design in Central Europe and send it to, let's say, India and vice versa. So also someone from Brazil can say, I have a design. And instead of sharing the material itself, they are sharing the design as a documentation and how you do it with details on how to do it. And that can be then sent, for example, to North America. To break it a bit down and make it a bit easier, we like to refer to this as, think of it of baking a cake. I think many of us have made a cake before or made food before based on a recipe, and we do not share, like I am not sharing with you my food that I made today, like the curry that I made today, and send it to you over to wherever you are right now. But no, what I would do is actually I would share the recipe for the food that I made. And that's very much the same principles that we're applying in distributed design, but with design files, so to say. So, and then we're not only sharing the files, but also we're taking into consideration which kind of ingredients we have locally and how we have to maybe adapt to the cake or the lunch that we're making, the dinner that we're making, based on the ingredients that we have available. Having said that, there are very strong principles or values within the platform. Besides that, we're focusing on circular production, that we're focusing on sharing data around the globe instead of products or materials themselves. And these are these four following ones. So distributed design is really a framework for open, collaborative, regenerative, and ecosystemic design. As I mentioned maybe briefly before, distributed design has emerged from this intersection of the maker movement and design sensibilities, also being more sensitive to how design has to be like proceeded or how to further develop design, and is not only advocating more sustainable, inclusive, collaborative practices, but is really being a proactive response for makers and designers who are aiming to change the design culture. Especially now when global challenges intensify, we're really looking forward to shift this existing paradigm and support this global connectivity and really focus on local productivity. So when I talk about these values, I can explain them a bit to bring them in maybe a bit into context. So open source mentalities, these values build on top of each other. So we're starting with open source mentalities. That's like the starting point for you is that you're open-minded, that you're eager to share information, knowledge, and data, guidelines for repair, open source documentations, that you're eager to share because sharing it can make things even better. You can learn from each other. You can further develop things. Then collaborative is talking about your making practices, is that your projects maybe educate or empower people to participate and understand the experience and embrace in the design practice. And that can go into the human or also non-human world. Regenerative is an encompassing value where we also take into consideration social regeneration, environmental regeneration, and value regeneration, meaning that social regeneration is really looking into the design process itself and how we can face social issues or challenges like social cohesion, or it can tap into cultural or political impact of a local ecosystem, like new norms, new attitudes, new beliefs. It can look into environmental regeneration that talks into the development of regenerative design principles. So how and what materials are you using? Does it take into consideration the lifetime of your product or your item, your artifact that you're making? Is it taken into consideration as well? What impact that has, and can you extend that lifetime, or is it even made to be reused or disassembled, or is it modular in a sense so you can change it over time? And then value regeneration, so that you not only make something that is good for you as a singular person, but it actually adds value to your surrounding ecosystem, and that can also be non-human, so maybe for your bee peers that are living in the forest around you. So it comes as people and planet. So all these three, taking them together, then would be an ecosystemic approach to design that goes really into looking into supporting and enriching existing and new social networks and infrastructures, that it empowers, for example, local, ancestral, social, or natural built ecosystems through the interventions that you're making. And while I'm still abstract, I will just do a few more abstract things, and then I will go a bit more practical so you can see what I mean with all of these words actually. And when I talk about we, I want to emphasize that it's not me sitting here in the room, but it's actually, there's a whole network behind the district design platform. So you can see some of these people that are leading in this platform and driving forward this idea from distributed design. So we're all the way over here from Iceland to Spain, Portugal, Denmark, and Tallinn, Estonia. So we're quite well distributed ourselves as well. And all of these nodes that you can see here on the map, they all have their own local networks connected to them. And extracted, or like zooming out of that, we're also connected to this Fab Lab network that you may heard of before. So we are some of the little nodes here within this Spanish peninsula. And but there's actually a lot of fabrication laboratories or maker spaces around the globe, and all of these believe in the same idea, saying that we should shift from using resources in one place and moving materials and then wasting materials and throwing them away in a landfill, but actually moving towards this DIDO model, which is saying we're only moving data across the globe, and the production and the use and the life cycle of the products, the objects, the artifacts, the interventions that we're having, the materials that we need to put these in place, they're all staying localized, using local knowledge, using local materials, using local skills and people to elaborate on them. So you can kind of see all of these little dots that you can see around here on this map. These are all little micro factories or flexible factories that really try to represent this idea of shifting away from this outdated mass production means to like of these outdated global supply chains, and more situated and open and distributed design principles. So while these digital revolutions that has happened in the past, and while this environment with the Fab Labs really has been able to create an environment for distributed design to seed and to flourish within this, and we're really grateful to be connected to these bigger networks. So now coming to the more practical side, maybe to really be able to take these values and these ideas maybe to your own projects as well. I would like to tap into how distributed design takes shape. So this revolutionizing opportunity has really shifted, as I mentioned, away from this production manufacturing towards decentralized mechanism, driven by the principles I've been mentioning before as open, collaborative, regenerative, and ecosystemic, and have connected all of us somehow via this digital layer, fueled by curiosity, by eager to be making, eager to be contributing to a greater good. And there are within this ecosystem emerging creators who are really like the ones that you're seeing here on this image. They're really pushing forward the ideas and pushing the boundaries, what it means to design on a day-to-day basis. And I'm going to show you some, I'm going to show one thing before I'm going to show you the examples is this digital layer is a really crucial aspect of distributed design, because without this digital space, as we are connecting also today, we wouldn't be able to share the information that we're sharing, the data that we're sharing, the knowledge that we're sharing on this global scale. So this digital layer can really extrapolate making. It can open doors to digitalized making, in which we can use new types and tools and platforms, as well as like augmenting the way we're using, VR, AR, all of these new things are quite interesting. And at a domestic scale at home, it as well, or in a local makerspace, this approach also aids this hyper-local, hyper-customized design solutions in which individual user needs, for example, can easily be addressed through parametric designs. And it also provides spaces for diversity in materials. What I mentioned beforehand, for example, if you're having a design for a chair that you're sharing on a global scale, and I'm making it here in Barcelona, it might look very different than when I send this design file to my parents, for example, who are living in Munich, or to my friend who's living in Brazil, or to my other friend who's living in Canada, right? Because they're going to be able to use the design, adapt the design to their local available material, and therefore can diversify as well the ways of how our designs show themselves. And other than that as well, it has been giving us the opportunity, this digital layer, to do capacity building and education and professional self-development through these spaces, how we are also meeting today. So without further ado, going from this like meta space of all of these principles, values, design, ways of designing, plural ways of designing, I'm going to tap into something more practical, down to earth, showing examples from the distributed design platform, from the people who are working on these intersecting fields, these relational fields, and show some examples. This is just some of the things we do. I can skip this for now and come back to this later. Because what we're doing, as I mentioned before, is where we promote, support, nurture emergent creative talents. And here are some of these emergent talents that are working, for example, on the intersection of all of these, what I mentioned here, but also they can work inside of each of these. And there are obviously many more. So they could work in art, they could work in education, food, fashion, healthcare, and place. These are just one of the few to mention. So let's tap into the stories. So one of the examples that I really wanted to show, it's a collective from the Netherlands. It's called Lucrative Dumpster Dives. So basically, they are looking into materials that are seemingly being wasted and trying to give them new life through interactive exhibitions, workshops, and so forth. So Lucrative Dumpster Dives itself is a foundation and an open source platform itself. One of the people who are working within this platform, Angelina Kumar, she is one of our creative talents, and she is looking into how to transform the art and cultural sector in more circular and sustainable ones. So they try to offer free materials for people to play with. They work with different young artists and designers, and yeah, really try to boost and turn the creative practice into thoughtful, social, and circular flows. So this is a very nice example how you can put all of these big ideas into something very tangible, what they're doing in their local situated space. Then the other project is from Budapest. It's called Recover. Recover is made by a design triplet. It's from Georgina, David, and Balaz, who are making, it's a product service. Basically, they're supporting people who are in need of personalized fixation devices or orthoses for example, treating bone fractures, bruises, injuries, and so forth. And they're doing this by 3D scanning and 3D printing these personalized fixation devices. As you may know, 3D scanning and 3D printing is nowadays used quite a lot already, but rarely actually used for immobilization devices. And this actually offers us several advantages and a widespread use of, instead of using plaster casts or negative characters, plaster casts, as they have a very negative impact. They have downsides that have to be taken into consideration. And they really want to amplify the idea of that today's modern medicine can be way more personalized and with custom designs that also not only are fashionable, let's say, but are really also doing the functionalities that they need. So they bring really the production of this close to the patient. These are not mass produced in one spot around the globe, but this is being produced in, for example, a makerspace close to the hospital or similar, or can be even done at home if needed. Here you can see another one of their examples that I've recently shared with us. Then another really great example comes from Belgium. This is from Naomi. She is actually from France and she studied art there. And now she's working on social design research. Basically, she has been working with this idea of, I'm not really good in French, so please pardon my French here, unités gonflables. So these objects that she's creating, they're inflatable objects to experiment with occupation of spaces, of unused spaces, and they kind of consist of a repetition of light and moving elements to invite also the public to participate in construction of this public space that is co-created through these objects. They can shift and move the objects as they need. And I think this is a very nice picture I like a lot as well, where you can see how 3 of these objects are being also tied together and made into like a play bed as well. These unities gonflables are composed of a textile cover basically, and they're like inflatable, so it's just air, and that makes them very transportable within the public space as well. So basically you just have to open up the tube on the side and all the air comes out, and it's very small packed, and you could take it to a different space within the urban environment, which is quite interesting for temporary occupation of spaces within a city scale or peri-urban space. Another very interesting project is called By the End of May. It's a research duo and designer duo that is exploring circular materials and the future of making, to put it quite broad. They are rethinking or trying to think about how they can not only share code online, what I mentioned before, but we can share digitally and around the globe, but also recipes for materials that we can then use in our local environments to use, not again a material that we have to order online or something. So we check the material recipe online, and we can then, based on the materials or waste materials that we have available locally, we can then make these materials ourselves and use them in our applied designs. They all do this in the context of something they called Post Paper Studio. It aims to be like a low-tech alternative to upcycle paper waste mainly, enabling designers and makers to transform paper waste in their own communities, to use and to replace conventional materials that they've used beforehand. These paper materials are using natural binding agents, which are being pressured using a modular energy efficient tools. And paper pulp is also very easily molded into sheets, for example, that what you can see here on the image as well. You can also mold them into bricks or other basic shapes that can become part of building blocks to make new object or furniture pieces. This goal is to create like an urban self-sufficient ecosystem of ateliers. So very similar to the ideas of this distributed fab labs, they're looking into different distributed ateliers that can dedicate themselves to this paper upcycling or recycling in a neighborhood scale, and then transform this waste, categorized waste materials into something that is then again useful to make new products or new objects, new artifacts, or can be used as building materials, for example. Obviously, this project is fully open source and really focuses on the low-tech nature of itself. So you don't need high-tech materials or 3D printers or anything that is maybe not available in your neighborhood. So it uses things that you might have already available, such as a press and so on. Then here you can see more of some of the beautiful material examples. And lastly, one of the other creative talents I wanted to show you is Domingo Club. As I've now shown some more isolated examples from the field of distributed design, I wanted to bring into context what it means to be part of the platform as a creative talent. So Domingo Club, they are a duo and they're working on promoting fermented plant-based proteins as an alternative to meat. And they are really looking into making tools that make it possible for people to make or start fermenting food at their homes. And for this, they always say they're teaming up with mushrooms. So I don't know if everyone knows what is tempe, but tempe is an Indonesian fermented food product. Originally was it made with soybeans. The taste of tempe is a bit similar maybe to mushrooms or nuts and yeast. And the texture, I would say, is quite firm, chunky. It's really nice. I honestly am really happy to be able to live very close to Domingo Club. They're actually based here in Barcelona and be able to use some of those, tempe sometimes. So Domingo Club is a creative talent duo that has applied for our awards, for example, one of these activities that we're doing within the platform, and they have won the first prize. And with this prize money, they were able to buy tools and materials, and they were able to move into a design studio, a shared space where they can rent a table on a monthly basis to work there instead of in their home. Additionally, they have also been, after that, and a year after, they have been taking part of the mobility scheme, actually not anymore being only a creative talent, but actually going into the role of being someone that is teaching their practice. So in 2022 and last year, they have been using the mobility scheme to go to the Open Food Factory event, which was in Polyfactory in Milan, which is the university there. In Polyfactory is the design department. And there they have been able to talk about the work that they're doing, which I'm going to show in a moment in detail. And they were able to share and teach other people as well how to make tempe. And lastly, now actually what is quite interesting is that they have this journey within the platform where they were a creative talent. They're going into this teaching or sharing position, and now they're becoming mentors. So now this it's really interesting that they're now being able to help other creative talents in their design journey, specifically in the field of how to make open source tools. This doesn't show, I don't know why. So maybe you can see here some of it, not so bad. So you can see it here small, but I will reshare in a moment here maybe, is that they're making a fermenter because fermenting tempe needs a continuous temperature over 30 hours, more or less. And for example, in Barcelona, we don't have this temperature 30 hours, exactly the same temperature. Maybe in Indonesia that is so, but as in our local context, we are not able to provide this aspect of this design process. They have made this device, so they built this tempe fermenter with electronics and open source design files and everything. So anyone could basically make this design of this fermenter themselves at home and can make tempe at home or ferment other objects at home, other foods at home, based on being able to use these tools, which again, if you would be in Indonesia, the environmental setting would allow you to make tempe just with the regular temperature that is around you. However, if you're in Germany, for example, or in Spain, the temperature is fluctuating or too low, and you would not be able to make this alternative food as alternative to meat in your own country. So how can you do this yourself? It's always a big question, I guess. I try to already bring these big ideas down into smaller ideas, into explaining a bit the history of distributed design, into showing you examples how other creative talents, how other creative people around the globe are applying distributed design and its values in their context and with their specific local challenges and needs. And sometimes it can be a bit overwhelming or hard to start, or yeah, maybe you have an idea sometimes, but you don't know if you're covering all the aspects that you would like to cover in terms of environmental sustainability or being regenerative or adding value to your ecosystem and all of these things. So as I mentioned before, like it's really hard sometimes how you can be yourself a driver of design, how you can be yourself putting into practice this. And that's why what we're trying to do in the platform right now is to make this a bit more accessible for people and how they can apply this themselves. So we're building this reflection tree, which is being tested and implemented over the last few months with creative talents that's been co-developed with the members that I've shown you before. And basically, it's bringing these values that I have been mentioning before. So open, collaborate, regenerate social, regenerate environmentally, regenerate value, and ecosystemic into more aspirational questions. And when you are in your design process, what you can basically do is then going through these questions, giving yourself a score, and then being able to reflect upon and knowing when you've done all of these questions, this takes maybe half an hour at most, to know where you could improve your design, in which area you can improve your design. So this could be, for example, like I've been very open, I'm being very collaborative in my design process, but actually I'm not regenerating any value or not regenerating any environmental aspects within my design. And that is something that I could do better to make my design a bit more holistic in that sense. So to be able to do this, we are also adding resources down here. Again, this is a very preliminary draft of how this reflection tree looks. In the future, this will be accessible and maybe in a month or two on our website, and you could use it yourself and go through these questions, and you would be able to find resources as well that you, for example, looking to, I want to know how to better regenerate environmentally, and you would be able to click on some resources and check it out and find maybe tools or reference papers that can help you how to apply this in your own design practice. So I will obviously let the people from SPLOT know, from this team also know when this is available in case anyone is interested. So I hope this will be very useful for you as well. Besides that, there are many ways of interacting with the platform, and being part of this network is absolutely open for anyone. I always like to emphasize on this. Everyone who's interested in becoming a creative talent, or that you are already a creative talent, of course, but interested in learning more about these values that we share and how to put them into practice. There are a lot of educational activities that we do that maybe can enrich the current practice that you're doing. And I don't know why this is sometimes not showing. But so, for example, what we have as a very basic invitation is that we have an online exhibition space where you and your peers could upload, for example, your profiles or your projects that you're developing within this program. This exhibition space aims mainly to connect a network between creative talents, but also giving visibility to this rich existing network of people who are already working on their respective fields, and also try to inspire people to see and check other people's work out and connect through that. We also have the awards, what is what I mentioned before. For example, Domingo Club, they have applied for the awards. So maybe if projects, some of your projects are coming out and you really think they're well executed, you could apply, for example, District Design Awards if you would like to. This is completely open for you. There's no ties connected, no money that you would have to spend. We also have a mobility scheme. That's what I mentioned before as well, that some of the Domingo Club team, they have been part of this mobility scheme to be able to move from Spain to Italy with a dedicated budget, to learn from the context of Italy, to dive into the design practice there and take some of that ideas back to here, but also being able to share their design practice in that Italian context. And lastly, all of the things that I'm talking about, they're always consolidated in the book. It's digital, which are available through all of these links. So I've already shared this presentation with the team of this program, so they can share this presentation with you afterwards, so you can easily just click on these downloadable links later on and find more inspiring resources, inspiring people that are working on the district design field that I've tried to summarize somehow in this talk. But there are actually way more people and absolutely brilliant minds behind this project, who some of which are sharing their ideas in these books. And yeah, there's a Circular City Challenge in Barcelona that I invite you to come as well if you would like. And yeah, and that's basically it. I think I'm good with the talking for now. And I hope this somehow was interesting for you all. I'm gonna stop sharing. And that's it from my side.
Thank you very much. I mean, it was so many inspiring informations, even for myself, and I hope for the participants as well. I would like to open the floor now for questions. So please just either turn on your microphone or raise the hand, or write it in the chat.
Yeah, sure. You want to ask something?
If there is something.
Yeah.
Hi, yeah. Jessica, thank you so much for the presentation. It was really like a lot to digest, but
Sorry.
in a very positive way. No, in a really positive way. It was really like, you know, I also like kudos. It's just so pleasant to see a really clear and well thought out presentation. It's something I'm completely incapable of doing, but so it is really great. The way the sort of context you were describing is really interesting, because a lot of, I guess, our contemporaries who have chosen a more critical approach to design and things like that really struggle to actually make a minimum wage, if that, like a living. So I wondered, like, you mentioned the Tempe example as maybe one that allowed this sort of critical approach, but are there any, because I'm always trying to think of alternative business models, because sometimes it feels that, you know, even though we want to work on an anti-capitalist basis, we live in a form of capitalism now that demands these sorts of things. And I think, you know, the market, quote unquote, is like, doesn't seem willing to pay designers for this critical stuff. And so I find it quite disheartening when I look around me and everybody's really struggling. And so I wondered, have you got any examples of using this kind of like distributed design that have actually led to designers having a fair wage while being critical? Because it seems that it's very few and far between from my experience.
No, you're completely right there. That is one of the things I think we're very much aware of as well in our own, and very self-critical as well within the members and the platform, the people that we're working with. And I don't think I have a solution to this neither. I can just share some experiences and some thoughts from my side. So it's, as you mentioned, very much obvious and present that creative people still are not receiving the type of wages that are that should be fair, let's say, because design or creativity is very much undervalued until today. I think you would have to take this a more contextualized and depending on where you are located at approach as well for this. So if you're looking into being in Spain or being in Denmark or being in Norway, designers are being paid way different wages. And if you're maybe more in the Nordic countries, you might get a very fair wage for your work, because design is valued in a very different way than when you are, for example, let's say in Spain, because I'm located here. So this is very contextualized and it's hard to give one straight answer for this. However, there are some people who are making with this, let's say, alternative approaches, also their living wage. So Domingo Club is one of these people. And this is what I'm going back into, this like hybrid profiles. So on one side, they're doing the work they love, right? They're making their fermented tempe, they are doing this open source work, they're making the tools, they make them accessible, everything is open source. What they make their living on, though, is that some people still, that's nice that it's open source, but they are too busy, or they're actually interested in receiving the product in the final stage. So one way of them receiving money back is that people buy their designs as a full. The other way, and this is the main way, is actually that they're doing education around their idea. So they're giving tempe workshops, they're bringing all these different kinds of actors within their field of interest, and people are eager to learn about this. So they created this like educational program around what they do. So again, this is very hybrid. One thing is that you have everything open source and you share everything, but you can actually find areas of your work that you can then monetize in the end and have some kind of revenue model.
Yeah, this is what I've noticed as well, was this branching out into kind of, you know, not corporate education, but like business education, where someone who has this sort of critical practice then does like a kind of workshop day with a bigger company and educating employees and things like that. No, it's very interesting because I've done quite a lot of qualitative research. I never know the difference, but I never remember the difference. But like interviewing recent design graduates in the Netherlands, Belgium, a bit in France, in the UK, about this exact thing. Like there needs to be kind of more transparency when we basically just in the whole structure of design, and when we're looking at projects, and you know, was this publicly funded? Was this funded by you know, I don't know, the Dutch government or stimuleringsfonds or something like that? And it's you're never quite sure. And then you're always kind of comparing your practice to these other people who maybe got funding or didn't get funded. And so it kind of creates this sort of toxic atmosphere. At least that's what the interviewees were saying. And I tend to agree with them. And that's why it was so interesting to look at the distributed design network and really think about it on that level, because I haven't come across it before. So it was really fascinating to see this structure in place, to be able to reference and situate and contextualize. So it was a great pleasure to see it. Thank you for presenting it.
Thanks. Pleasure to be able to present it as well. So no, but I think really what you're mentioning there in terms of from the designer's perspective, I feel like there's still this mindset, at least in my design practice, where you're being taught in the autoren design, so like in the author design. So it's like you as a singular designer, you're doing something and it has to be great and it has to be competitive and you have to be the best at what you're doing, right? Whereas maybe in our community, this is a bit twisted because everything is about collaborative and being open, about sharing. So this is this type of autoren, and I think I'm one person and I'm the one that is presenting my work, is a bit more like, no, I'm presenting my work and I want other people to be part of this to make my design or their design better. So this is something very beautiful, actually. Ola, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I was just wondering, I mean, if there are no other questions from the participants right now. I have one. A lot of those projects you showed us, or generally the distributed design talks about, or even, you know, Fab Labs or the EAC, we talk a lot about social impact and how those projects subscribe in like a bigger scheme of things, including all these networks of non-living or non-human entities, right? I was wondering if you have if that exists, and if you could share that with us, if you have any tools or frameworks for actually measuring or checking that social impact. And I mean, of course, social impact is a very complex term, and it's like it's a huge thing of networks of many different meanings. It's like multifaceted nature of that, of course, but in a simplification and little generalization, if there is something, or if there's a way to check or to assess that part of the project.
That's a really good point. I think there, before I tap into resources, and I could check on some things and I can share them with you afterwards as well, so you can share it with these people participating here, is I think when you look in this way that I was trying to explain, you would go one step before measuring your impact. So before you put out your design and you have your idea and you measure that impact afterwards in terms of environment or social, whatever you want to measure afterwards, you actually already in your design process make sure that you're doing it with the people, with the ecosystem, with the actors that you're interested in involving and having impact on or upon. And I think that already can help a lot to ensure that what you're doing is reaching what your objective is, right? Because if you then make, for example, a design and you make a bottle, whatever, I'm just saying something random here, and you bring it out there, you bring it to the market, you bring it to the community, and they're like, what am I doing with this bottle? All of your results will be negative. Like, you haven't reached the impact that you've wanted to reach, right? So it's nicer to go with a more humble approach prior, coming with an idea, or actually tapping into the community that you're interested in, joining them and say, what is that you're interested in? Like, what is what you want to do? What are the challenges that you face? And what role can I play within that and can support from my point of view? So with that approach, you can already ensure to a certain extent that you're actually reaching some kind of impact that is more desirable. But to make it a bit more reporting style, I can try to find some nice resources that is like more about impact measurement in like a very practical kind of sense, and can share them with you as well.
That would be great. So basically design needs to happen in a context, meaning you have to talk to communities, or you have to actually see or experience, or I mean, choose any other verb that fits the context you are designing for, or to get to know it in one or the other way. That's, yeah. It seems so simple. It's not that easy, it seems.
It is not always that easy, and I think that's sometimes the hardest point as well. Because it's like, what community are we talking about? Where is this community? Like, what connects these people to make that makes them a community, right? But then sometimes it's like, either you're super eager and you're like, I want to go to the Amazon forest and I want to work with indigenous people. And if you're so eager to do that, you will do it and you'll find the people. But sometimes it's also nice to reflect, okay, who is my community? Who I am connected to? Who what are the struggles that I am facing in my community? What are the struggles that other people within my community are facing? And then try to solve these issues to make it a bit, let's say, easier and quote unquote easier. Because you will have also your personal perspective. You will have more like not only your personal perspective, but you will have this other actor's perspective very close to you. And it will be easier to find something that is valuable to intervene on and design with. I mean, I think sometimes as designers, we want to always solve the biggest, greatest issues of the world. And that can be very challenging. But sometimes something very small, very specific, that is like this little nudge in this little area from the community that you're part of and you're working with, that can be already a great solution, or yeah, something interesting to work with. I don't know if I scared people off with this big meta talk.
No, I think actually it's the opposite. It seems for me, I mean, I'm not don't want to say it now for all the others, but it seems like you managed to bring all those big meta ideas into very specific, tangible concepts or solutions is not the right word, but experiences or happenings, and like actionable steps. And I think in the context of designing for like the post-war Ukraine, it's super important to consider that part as well. How impactful the projects can be in a big or smaller scale. So I hope the participant felt the same level of inspiration as I did just now. Are there some questions? If not, I guess not anymore. I will end the live stream.